Tesla is going to go up 30x, nay 100x, nay 1000x. Yes, it's going to do all of those things and so much more, according to at least the varied snake oil salesmen of the world. And maybe we will find out why they believe that, or if they actually do. I'm joined by someone who is not a snake oil salesman. At least he hasn't tried to sell me any just yet. Randy Kirk from the Randy Kirk Hour. I've decided it's called. Joining me, I'm Brian. Welcome to Futuraza. So, Randy, I've got this theory. There are a number of channels, and I won't name names, but if I were to, I would call them Bozo and Ronald McDonald, because there are, of course, Tesla Q, but on the other end of the spectrum, there are the equally ridiculous and sensational people who say it's going to 100x. It's going to 50x, it's going to 1000x. And I find that to be dishonest. I find that to be clickbait. I find that to be selling promises to rubes and suckers. And I think that if anyone follows them, that they might be a great fool. Now, I've seen you say some what ifs. And I don't believe that those what ifs rise to the level of prognostication any more than people who say, what would you do if you won the lottery? And, there's a good answer to that in, Office Space, but I won't repeat it because it's too good. I don't want to spoil it. So, Randy, what do you think? Are these honest people? Are these, or are they just selling dreams for clout?
Yeah. So, all right. So the key here is to decide what we're really talking about. So if you're talking about hardware and Elon's original plan to sell 20 million cars, and that was before we were really talking much about energy storage at all, you can do the math and you can say, okay, here's the potential. This is all you're really talking about. And anybody that would have talked about it being multiples of that number or whatever that number was, I mean, maybe again, justifiably $1 trillion company like it is right now, this would be, fair. When you add in energy, and talking about a terawatt for the entire decade, I mean, by the end of the decade, now you might be adding another T to that. You might be looking at 2 trillion. Okay. So you could be looking at double today's numbers. And then you add everything else in, everything you can think of, all the rest of the stuff, not counting the big two. And, you get really enthusiastic. You might be able to get to 3T. So you're 3 trillion, you're triple today's number, roughly speaking. I think that all of that would be fair. If somebody said those things, I think it's possible, especially under the leadership of, the greatest entrepreneur ever. But where most people start putting the big numbers on, including Cathie Wood, is when you start adding in robotaxi and Optimus, and then the numbers get potentially a little cuckoo.
So what is the highest multiple you've seen? Someone who isn't, someone who gets respect on, YouTube or X. What is the highest multiple of today's valuation that you have seen from someone who you might not call a crazy person, but I definitely would?
Well, the person that I paid the most attention to is Cathie at ARK Invest. And I believe their middle case for 2029 is 2,700. So that would be roughly a 10x from here.
Okay.
Yeah. So that would be Cathie. And that would be my most. And by the way, that doesn't include Optimus, though. Mm-hmm. So that's really just robotaxi and hardware. And so you're looking at 2,700. So that's the 10x. Then you get this nutty part, this whole thing about Optimus. It's kind of beyond comprehension is, I guess, the best way you can put it. Some of these things, if you go out far enough, Warren Redlick and I used to, work hard at becoming the most optimistic about Tesla. He would throw out an envelope number. I'd go do a graph or a chart, and I'd come back and my number would be higher than his number. And we go back and forth. But when you come down to Optimus, there's things that are going to happen between now and when Optimus gets to Elon Musk's number, which I believe is 25 trillion. market valuation for Tesla compared to 1 trillion now. So it'd be 25 times today's market valuation. If you add 7 trillion for robotaxi, that becomes 32 trillion. And if you add 3 trillion for everything else, you're looking at 35 trillion, which might be more like, 35 times today's number. So everything goes perfectly under some rather smart people's evaluations. You get to 35 trillion.
So worth noting, 35 trillion is worth more than the entire S&P 100's market cap combined, or thereabouts. The number I'm seeing is 33.5 trillion. I don't know if that was current as of, I think, November 29th. So I struggle to think, and that's just a 30x. And that 30x includes the trillion from Tesla already. So I struggle to believe that Tesla would be worth more than the next 99 companies combined. That strikes me as a little bit high. And I think if someone is saying this was 35x or 30x, you said, I think if someone is saying 30x, they are pulling your leg. I think that unless we see Zimbabwe era inflation, where everyone is 100 trillionaire, that these market cap numbers might be a little optimistic.
So here's where the problem lies. The problem lies is that all of this is dynamic. And this is the problem I have with Warren. And Warren and I have talked about this a few times. And Warren actually, I think, believed me because I think he modified some things. So for instance, let's take energy storage as a simple model. Energy storage right now was selling for I think $2 million per unit. Well, as they sold more and more of them, and as lithium prices came down, they're now selling them for about $1 million a unit. Well, that wasn't anybody's figures. Nobody was anticipating a drop from 2 million to 1 million per unit. Well, maybe we need to imagine, based on Tony Seba's analysis, that those big containers drop even more. Maybe they're only 500,000 a unit by 2029 or 2030. And so even though we're selling a bunch more of them, a lot more of them, the unit cost goes down a lot. All right, let's take a yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it's a lot easier to make 200 grand on a $2 million item than it is 200 grand on a $500,000 item. And increasing volume can offset that and should. I still think that the mission is more important than the bottom line. I prefer seeing more power walls, more mega packs. I've seen people say, well, they should sell fewer at a higher price. Really? Because I think these are good products that need to be in the market. Let's do that instead. And again, it's unfair to cite Tony Seba because he is a time traveler, and that makes his perspective, just it's cheating is what it is. But
well, I'm just mentioning Tony Seba and Elon Musk, who both seem to be time travelers. So when you get over to Optimus, which is the number one driver of potential profits in the future, and the thing that would create that massive, crazy number that you're so worried about, is that you also don't know what's going to happen to that robotics business, that Optimus business. If it's true that the Optimus can replace all labor, quote, all labor, all, let's say, difficult labor that most humans don't want to do would be enough, I think. But also create some new labor opportunities of things that nobody ever thought that we would be able to do because the cost per unit drops a lot. And now you can make something that didn't used to be something that was viable. So if we get into the billions, literally billions of Optimi being produced at even $20,000 a piece, yes, you'd be talking about a company that would be bigger than the combination of all the rest of the S&P. So it could be true.
now, worth mentioning to the folks at home, the reason I'm having this discussion with Randy is because he is a little bit on that side of the fence, but not so far that he can't have a reasoned discussion about it. I would argue that autonomy is going to be ginormous. I would argue that Optimus is going to be ginormous. I would argue that 35 to $100 trillion valuation is too much. The entire S&P 500, I think, is only 45 or 50 trillion. So for a company to exceed the value of the next 499 companies combined might be a little optimistic. We might be getting into some Dutch tulip bulb territory there, but it would certainly be interesting to see. Before we get on with our discussion, I would say in the comments, what do you think of this? Are these snake oil salesmen? What is your price target? And what does your price target need to be to retire? Because mine, I think I would need about 1,200 a share
Solve it.
would probably solve it. And I don't know if that's, hey, I got time. Because as you can tell, I'm just radiating youthful exuberance.
Absolutely right. Me too. So the other
Hmm.
dynamic,
Hmm.
that needs to be taken into consideration here is what you just mentioned. Okay, is that if the Optimus robots create a completely different economy, which is what Elon has also said, he sees it changing the entire economy to an economy of abundance, where people's basic needs will be so inexpensive. You know, your food, your shelter, your transportation, all of that will be so inexpensive that the question will become, what do we spend money on anyway? What is money? So then if you're talking about a $25 trillion stock, it's like, well, who cares? It doesn't, because it's not a number that
Mm.
anybody even is concerned about anymore, because like like a retired person with 50 million in the bank, what do you spend it on? You know, after you buy your groceries, which you probably pay about as much as I do, and after you pay, you don't have a mortgage. After you pay for your transportation, which you're probably paying a little more than I am, you pay for your 80-inch television. You don't pay any more or less than I do. You know, you're paying pretty much the same for your day in and day out as somebody that's middle class or upper middle class. So what do you spend it on? Well, you can spend it on jewelry, you can spend it on experience, you can spend it on more property, you know, but all you're doing is buying more assets that now the assets, what are good the assets to you? They're just things that have no value, because what do? Maybe they bring in a return, but you've already got 50 million in the bank. So you see, the economy becomes a very interesting thing at that point.
It changes everything. And I'm sure there'll be some comments about universal basic income. I have made a whole video about that. If I remember, I'll put it in the description, or you can just go to my channel and search UBI. You'll find it, where I say that it is time to have that discussion, but it's not time to take that action, because we don't yet know what kind of numbers will even make sense. Well, make it $1,000, make it 1,000 might be too much if
Yes.
food is basically free and housing is essentially free, and utilities could be essentially free if the robots are the ones building the solar panels and mining the materials, and it's just government land anyway. The question we would be asking would be the wrong question. And an age of abundance, we've been hearing about it we've been hearing about it since at least the 40s, and we're hearing less about it because the economy is pretty tough, and housing is tough, and education is expensive, and medical care is prohibitive, and a mess, an absolute disaster. And it's frustrating, but I get it. I understand. So I guess that is enough, Randy Kirk. I think we've discussed it. I think we all agree that what cures our ailing bodies is snake oil, and what helps our sagging portfolios is a push-up stock. So there is a lot of opportunities
Did you
to
see how he did that?
yeah, that's I'm like a freestyle rapper that way, except with quality jokes. Guys, what did we miss? What did we misunderstand? Leave it, I beg of you. Head over to Randy's channel, see what he's up to. I thank him for being here. I get it. Not everybody loves Randy because he's such a giggly goose, but that's because I'm a funny guy. He can't help it. And if you find his views don't mesh with yours, that's the reason he's here, is because I don't want an echo chamber. I want a balanced discourse, and I think that provides value. I would say that times are tough all around. If you get a chance to support me on Patreon or YouTube as a channel member, on X as a subscriber, or use my referral link on Tesla, that would help me out tremendously and keep me in business. Yeah. So thanks for being here. Like, subscribe, do the usual, and I cannot wait to hear from you, clever robots, on the next one.